I keep trying to film the video, but this is what I'm dealing with right now. What are you doing? What are you doing? But within about 2 minutes, he's gone from that to passed out, so I apologize if you can hear any snoring in the background. But hi everyone, my name's Katie, and today I have a different kind of a review for you today because it's not very often I read young adult, contemporary, insta-love romance novels. In fact, I literally can't remember the last time I read a young adult novel. I think it's been well over a year and a half. And of course, that's nothing knocking that genre or type of book. It's just that that's not generally what I gravitate towards. We all gravitate towards different types of books, and there's nothing wrong with that. But this book has definitely had a lot of hype, not just within BookTube, but in the outside book reviewing community as well. And even though this isn't a genre I normally gravitate towards, I saw so many reviewers I really enjoy and trust just give this 5-star glowing reviews, so I wanted to see if I would feel the same. So as usual, I'm going to get into a spoiler-free summary and then pros and cons. So The Sun is also a Star takes place in New York City, and we have I keep getting paranoid every time he moves because since he's blind, sometimes he'll just walk straight off the bed, and I have hardwood floors and my bed's quite high up, so every time he stands up on the edge of the bed, my heart kind of stops. But then he also starts crying when he's on the floor, so I'm just like, make up your mind. Anyway, so The Sun is also a Star takes place in New York City, and it's primarily told from the point of view of two protagonists. So first we have Natasha. She was born in Jamaica, lived there until she was 8, until she moved to New York City with her mother, father, and younger brother. And she is understandably very upset, sad, and depressed about the fact that essentially by 10 p.m. that night her family is going to be deported out of the United States. She's very much a realist, very pragmatic, very scientific. And then we have Daniel, who is a Korean American. His family wants him to go to Harvard or Yale and become a doctor, even though he's a hopeless romantic and just wants to be a poet. So we have these two individuals coming together, and it's definitely a story of insta-love, and obviously that battle that's kind of in all of our minds between our head and our hearts and kind of fate and science. So my number one pro would definitely be the very unique writing style and pacing and the short chapters. I will admit, when I sort of first flipped through the book and I saw how some of the chapters were literally just a paragraph, I'm not normally a fan of that. Are you gonna walk off the bed? No. Yes, you are. But as I was saying, at a surface level when I was glancing at the book, I really didn't think I was gonna like the really quick short chapters because generally I like much longer chapters, but it really worked with this book considering the whole thing takes place in less than 12 hours. And I think the author kind of wants you to feel how quickly these moments are going by. And even though the story is told primarily from the points of view of Natasha and Daniel, interspersed are, it's hard to describe, but it'll say something like the history of eyes or the history of fate. So anything that's mentioned that's kind of important by the characters, the author will kind of plug in some history, which was always really interesting. And I was very happy to find that I did end up really enjoying these characters and their romance, and I really was rooting for them by the end of the book or even just halfway through the book. And normally when we talk about insta-love, it's a definite con in books. It's a negative that I know the majority of us don't like. This book is different though in that the book is about insta-love and whether or not that can be real and genuine. And so I think the fact that the book has a lot of self-awareness about insta-love makes its take on it really interesting, and I ended up really liking it. I also did really like how they handled race. I feel like when some books talk about race, it's very one note, if that makes sense, but with this book it dealt with it in a serious manner sometimes, and in other instances it was much more lighthearted, so it felt like a really realistic balance and take on the race of both of these characters and their families. So throughout this book I really only had one con, and that was that even though I did love, you know, the discussions between Daniel and Natasha, you know how Daniel is this hopeless romantic and how Natasha is the opposite and she's very analytical and just believes in facts. It was just very apparent throughout the book that the author definitely was on Daniel's side in terms of being kind of a romantic and believing in fate. So although I enjoyed their discussions throughout the book, it was just so obvious that the author's viewpoints really aligned with Daniel's. So I kind of felt that as I was reading the book, and then even when you read her little blurb, it says that Nicola Yoon is a hopeless romantic who believes that you can fall in love in an instant and that can last forever. And I'm not knocking her for believing that. I think it's wonderful if people believe that, but I just think the book would have been more interesting if it really felt like it was, you know, a balanced discussion between these two characters about it. When it often felt kind of a little bit one-sided to me, at least, just because I could like feel the author's voice kind of coming through Daniel, which I think took away from the experience a tiny bit for me. But overall, overall, I enjoyed The Sun Is Also a Star so much, and even if you don't normally read young adult books, even if you don't really normally read romance novels, I really would recommend checking this out. So if you guys enjoyed this video, let me know if you read The Sun Is Also a Star and what you thought about it, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye.